This was the first war in human history to be broadcast live. 800 Chinese warriors faced tens of thousands of fierce Japanese invaders. Military observers from around the world gathered on site, watching the battle with a cold eye, yet not a single country. One person reached out to help across the river. Tens of thousands of civilians spontaneously donated goods and grain, doing everything they could to support the granaries. The defending army is known to the world. In reality, only about 400 soldiers surrounded the warehouse, and the military might intimidated the enemy. They resolutely faced the outside world, known as the 800 heroes. But facing just a few hundred Chinese soldiers defending to the death, the Japanese army had no bottom line and resorted to the most despicable means of warfare. He brazenly released Jizzy poison gas into the Sihang warehouse. This chemical weapon, known as the king of poison gas, can cause skin to rot, exhaustion of the 5 organs, slowly passing away in extreme pain. Poisonous gas suddenly surged into the warehouse. The defenders were caught off guard, and the anti-gas equipment was severely lacking. A life or death moment. Veterans concentrate their wisdom, soak the towel with urine, covering their mouths and noses to save themselves. Many young recruits were already trembling with fear. In the midst of the panic, he simply couldn't control himself. The veteran beside him noticed. Silently, he took down his only gas mask and handed it to the recruit. Commander urgently ordered the exhaust fan to be turned on, but unexpectedly, instead, the air currents blew the poisonous gas toward the foreign concession on the opposite bank. The streets of Nan and instantly descended into chaos, with passers-by. Samban fled in panic and fled into the warehouse. The poisonous gas gradually dissipated. The soldiers immediately worked desperately to rescue their wounded comrades. Everyone knew this very clearly. Defending the Sihang warehouse was destined from the very beginning. A path of patriotism with no return. Late at night, the Suzhou River is pitch black like mist. 3 soldiers silently slipped underwater, under the cover of night. The Sihang warehouse had long been surrounded on all sides, doomed to die the cage. Exhausted and out of provisions, surrounded by songs of truth. Every minute and every second is facing death head-on. They just want to borrow. This only waterway seeks a glimmer of hope, even if it is just a faint hope. I also wanted to fight with all my might, but it was extremely cruel. They had just dived into the water not far before. They ran straight into a fully armed Japanese death squad. Under the cover of night, these Japanese invaders quietly and covertly made a move. Attempting a surprise attack, the Sihang warehouse caught the defending troops off guard. The 3 soldiers felt a sudden jolt in their hearts and hurriedly sank to the bottom, holding my breath tightly, hiding myself deep in the darkness of the river. Not even a trace of water could be shed. The Japanese invaders, almost right above their heads, passing by with a solemn and murderous manner. The cold gleam of the bayonet flickered faintly in the night. The breath of death was at hand. Among them, one soldier was already a poor swimmer. His chest felt like it was bursting, and the pain was uncontrollable. Her body began to struggle uncontrollably. Bubbles keep coming, continuously emerging from their mouths and noses. It was clear they were about to reveal the 3 of them. Additionally, the 2 soldiers were filled with intense courage, but he could only grit his teeth. He reached out and pinned the struggling brother underwater. Only after the Japanese troops had completely withdrawn did the 2 soldiers slowly release their grip. But the struggling brother had long since disappeared without a trace. The icy Suzhou River became his final resting place. The 2 survivors endured their grief and desperately swam toward the warehouse wall. The scene before them, just as they poked their heads out, sent chills down their spines. A large group of Japanese soldiers were holding long ladders, like a dense group of bee soldiers, silently climbing up along the warehouse exterior wall. Among them, one soldier neglected his own safety. Instantly forget fear. Use all your strength. He roared and called the police in the direction of the warehouse. The sound pierced the silence of the deep night. Across both banks of the Suzhou River, compatriots heard this desperate scream. He instantly realized, immediately beat the drums and gongs, shouting loudly, raised the alarm loudly. Remind your comrades in the warehouse. Even foreigners on the lease turned on their searchlights. Intense lights instantly illuminated the scene. The entire warehouse wall was exposed to the Japanese soldiers climbing the wall, leaving nothing to hide. Exposed to broad daylight, garrison inside the warehouse was awakened by the sound of alarms and shouting. But just as he grabbed the gun, fierce fighting sounds could already be heard downstairs. The Japanese suicide squad had already taken advantage of the chaos, sneaking into the warehouse. It was frantically attacking every floor. The narrow warehouse passage instantly turned into a battlefield of bloodshed and bloodshed. The enemy surged in from all directions like a tide. Yet the defenders of the 4th Aviation Warehouse did not retreat an inch. Bayonets collided fiercely with each other. Gunfire intertwined in the cramped space. The wind roared, shouts of battle and screams of agony. Firearm collisions The sound was deafening. Every inch of the floor in the warehouse was soaked with blood. Every breath of air was filled with blood and smoke. This brutal and extreme battle, it lasted the entire night. Finally, the Japanese soldiers, who had attempted a night raid, were left strewn everywhere, corpses scattered, and they retreated in disarray. The soldiers were wounded all over. He threw the Japanese soldiers' corpses out the window with all his might. In this way, they declared the unyielding spirit of Chinese soldiers. The people on the south bank witnessed this exhilarating victory across the Suzhou River with their own eyes. Excitedly, they shouted loudly, their cheers rising wave after wave. The earthquake subdued the entire Suzhou River, and the two soldiers who originally wanted to escape this doomed prison by a twist of fate, with a desperate cry of life, he achieved great merit, becoming the unsung hero guarding the warehouse tonight. In the face of Canadian justice, all his cowardice turned into the courage to face death. The tenacious resistance of the Sihang warehouse garrison had long been utterly shocked. Military observers from around the world gathered together, holding up their binoculars. They kept a close eye on every inch of the opposing battleground. They watched as hundreds of Chinese soldiers fought against tens of thousands of Japanese troops. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief at the series of crushing defeats, causing the Japanese army to lose all face. Furious and humiliated, they immediately assembled a large army, even arrogantly boasting, "It will definitely be leveled within 3 hours." News of the Sihang warehouse reached the southern bank, and the concessions were instantly in an uproar. Some even privately bet on the outcome of this defensive battle. Everyone was anxiously awaiting this battle, of the weak resisting the strong. What will the bloody battle ultimately lead to? The warehouse was adjacent to the concession boundary. Underground are also a large number of gas cylinders. If it detonates, the consequences would be unimaginable. The Japanese army was wary and never dared to move the commercial concessions. Heavy artillery and fierce assault, but this time, they completely disguised themselves in private, giving up sneaky attacks. He launched an overwhelming wave of authority, instantly increasing the pressure to assault the defenders. The heavy warehouse shook violently under the fierce artillery fire of the Japanese army. Tiles and bricks kept falling. The Japanese army surged forward wave after wave like an endless tide. The soldiers who had fought bitterly for days were already exhausted, gradually revealing what they didn't know. But an even more urgent crisis suddenly struck. A Japanese squad braced themselves with heavy bulletproof steel plates, desperately protecting themselves. Recklessly, he rushed to the bottom of the warehouse building and hid under the steel plate, furiously chiseling at the wall. The clanging sound of chipping through the wall. Every sound struck the hearts of the defenders. They tried to dig open the wall and stuff a large amount of explosives. They blew down an entire wall and breached the warehouse defenses in one fell swoop. At this critical moment of life and death for the 1,000 troops, a young soldier resolutely stepped forward.
How can ye, O Machuan students, be called big lobsters? Don't win against me!
Why did he not eat it so quickly? Take out the chicken ball. You're the only ones who will keep the Sichuan students at your fingertips.
He used his flesh and blood to shatter the Japanese steel plate formation, blasting through the last bottleneck of the South Bank spectators. But the Japanese offensive did not stop. They organized steel plates again. The squad was determined to blow open the wall.
If you want to get face from the central government, you won't need to try to reverse the situation. Walking again. I really don't know much. Just one more thing. If not to use me, who else on the street? Who is it? My name is John Colvin. My name is Liu Hero.
The southern bank instantly fell into a dead silence. This was not quiet. It was the ultimate shock in each person's chest. With a loud crash, military observers from various countries on the shore slowly lowered their binoculars. He remained silent for a long time. Japanese explosives could blast open the high walls of the Sihang warehouse. But what awakened Chen Shushen's resolve to sacrifice himself for the country was the indomitable backbone and national soul of the entire Chinese nation. The hometown and name he shouted echoed through the sky. The policy of artillery fire is the deepest of the nation and the country. Shouting, the 3-hour realization has long passed. The Japanese army who threatened to raise the warehouses ultimately failed to advance even a single step. All they could do was leave behind the dead and wounded, retreating in disarray. 400 warriors held their ground to the death. It completely ignited the passion of all compatriots in Suzhou and Nanang. Even the gang members spontaneously lined up in long lines. Covered under the German flag following the foreign journalist, he resolutely rushed to the riverbank, all to deliver a lifeline to the Sihang warehouse across the strait. The Japanese soldiers hid in the shadows, coldly sniping, targeting the Chinese. The cold spear accurately knocked down the reels in everyone's hands. Someone was thrown down with a heavy bullet. Immediately, someone rushed forward, disregarding life and death. He bent down, trying to pick up the lifeline that kept him alive. Watching compatriots fall one by one in pools of blood on the riverbank, the young man named Daozi could no longer suppress his grief and anger. He fought his way to the front of the line and resolutely cut his own thumb, pressing down heavily on the bloodstain, determined to risk his life for his compatriots and the country with his blood. This seemingly cynical little man, who grew up in casinos, his heart was clearer than anyone's. He knew well that this departure was about to happen, surviving countless ordeals, yet still risking his entire life, betting on this life and death gamble for the greater good of the nation. His body was agile as lightning. He dodged nimbly amid a barrage of bullets, dodging 3 fatal bullets in succession. He even concentrated his mind and suddenly threw the hat on his head, drawing Japanese fire and taking advantage of the gaps in the muzzle shift. They quickly rushed to the shore, pick up the telephone line that determines the survival of the warehouse and the entire army's communications. But the merciless bullet ultimately hit him. Just a few steps from the warehouse gate, another bullet was fired, pierced his leg hard. The garrison inside the warehouse clashed with swords, immediately concentrate firepower and provide frenzied cover, clearing the path ahead of threats. He dragged the bloody business district, struggling inch by inch toward the warehouse door. Every inch of the ground he moved left a blood gash. His whole body was soaked in blood, but just as he approached the gate, using his last bit of strength, he forced himself to stand. Give it your all. He pushed the telephone line toward the warehouse window, and the line was firmly caught by the guards. The hope for communication was finally delivered, and Daozi, this ordinary yet great young man, slowly collapsed on the riverbank. He never managed to open his eyes again. What he sent over was never an ordinary electric wire. That is Suzhou and thousands of compatriots on the southern shore, with the resolve to serve the country driven by the thunder of flesh and blood. Hundreds of millions of Chinese people remain indomitable. Akagi, who faced a national crisis together, was worried.